Hello everyone. Welcome back to Simple English Talks. I'm so happy you're here with us today.
Hey there! Great to see you all again. You know, something funny happened to me yesterday. Someone asked me a question in a meeting, and my mind just went completely blank. I had no idea what to say.
Oh, I hate when that happens. What did you do? Did you just stand there in silence?
Well, that's the thing. I used a phrase that bought me some time. I said, "That's a great question. Let me think about that for a moment." And those few seconds helped me collect my thoughts.
That's perfect. And that's exactly what we're talking about today. English phrases to buy time in a conversation. By the end of this episode, you'll have a toolkit of phrases you can use when you need a moment to think, and you'll never have to stand in awkward silence again.
This is such a practical skill, because conversations move fast, and sometimes you just need a few seconds to process what someone said, or to think of the right word. These phrases are your secret weapon.
Here's a question for you before we dive in. What do you usually do when someone asks you a question and you don't know what to say? Do you panic? Do you say a lot? Tell us in the comments.
Yes, we want to hear your experiences. We've all been in that situation. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Simple English Talks so you never miss an episode.
All right, let's get started. Where should we begin?
Let's begin with the basic concept. Why is it important to have phrases that buy you time, and what's the simplest way to do it?
Okay, so here's the foundational idea. In any conversation, there are moments when you need to pause and think. Maybe you didn't understand the question. Maybe you're searching for the right word. Or maybe you just need time to form your opinion. Time-buying phrases are sentences or expressions that give you those extra seconds without making the silence awkward.
The basic structure is simple. You're essentially saying, "I heard you, I'm thinking, give me a moment." But you're saying it in a way that keeps the conversation flowing. Instead of just going silent, you fill the space with a phrase that signals you're about to answer.
Let me give you some concrete examples of the most common time-buying phrases. We have things like, "That's a good question. Let me think. How should I put this? Well, let me see." And, "Oh, that's interesting."
Let me show you how these work in practice. Someone asks you, "What's your favorite movie?" You don't have an immediate answer, so you say, "Oh, that's a good question. Let me think for a second." And then you pause and think. The phrase bought you about 5 seconds.
Haha, I use "that's a good question" all the time. It's my go-to phrase when I need a moment. Even if the question isn't that good, it's a polite way to acknowledge the person and give yourself time. Plus, it makes the other person feel good because you called their question good.
That's a great point. These phrases aren't just about buying time. They're also about being polite and showing the other person that you're engaged. Silence can feel like you're ignoring them. These phrases show you're listening and thinking.
Here's a personal example from my life. Last week, someone asked me about a book I read months ago. I couldn't remember the author's name. So I said, "Oh, I read that a while ago. Let me see if I can remember the author." And while I was saying that, the name came back to me. The phrase gave my brain just enough time to catch up.
That's exactly how these phrases work. They keep your mouth moving while your brain searches for information. It's like a bridge between the question and your answer.
Now let's talk about the simplest time buyers of all, the single words and sounds. Words like well, so, and actually. These are the building blocks of buying time.
Let's practice with these. I'll ask you a question, and you use one of these single-word time buyers. Ready? What's the capital of Australia?
Well, let me think. It's Canberra, right? See how whom and well gave me a couple of seconds?
What did you have for breakfast 3 days ago?
Oh, that's a tricky one. So let me try to remember. I think it was toast and eggs. The so, and let me try to remember, bought me time.
Now, listeners, your turn. I'll ask you a question. Use a time-buying word before you answer out loud. What's a skill you'd like to learn? Go ahead, answer out loud right now.
Did you use a time buyer? Maybe you said, Well, I've always wanted to learn guitar. Or, that's interesting. I think I'd like to learn cooking. Now let's talk about negative forms. Sometimes you need to buy time because you don't understand the question. You can say, I'm not sure I understand. Could you say that again? Or, I'm not quite following. Could you rephrase that?
Can you try that? Think of a time you didn't understand something. How would you ask for clarification using one of these phrases? Say it out loud. I'm not quite sure what you mean. Could you explain that a bit more?
So to summarize this first section, time-buying phrases are expressions that give you a few seconds to think. The simplest ones are single words like well, so, and and they're not just about buying time, they're also about being polite and keeping the conversation flowing.
Now let's build on this foundation. There are time-buying phrases that do more than just give you a few seconds. Some of them actually help you organize your thoughts while you're speaking. Let's explore those.
Oh, this is where it gets really useful. So we've talked about simple phrases like let me think. But what about when you need more than just a few seconds? What about when you need to structure your answer while you're giving it?
Exactly. Let me introduce some organizational time buyers. These are phrases like, there are a few ways to answer that. Let me start by saying, the first thing that comes to mind is, and where should I begin?
I love, there are a few ways to answer that. It's brilliant because you're telling the person your answer will be thorough, but you're also buying yourself a lot of time to figure out what those few ways actually are.
Let's do a dialogue demonstration. I'll ask you a big, open-ended question, and you use an organizational time buyer to structure your answer.
Okay, hit me with a tough one.
What do you think about social media?
Wow, there are so many ways to answer that. Let me start by saying that social media has both positive and negative sides. On one hand, it connects people. On the other hand, it can be addictive. See how I used, there are so many ways to answer that, to buy time, and then I structured my answer?
That was perfect. You bought at least 10 seconds with that opener, and you sounded thoughtful and organized. Compare that to just saying, it's good and bad. The time buyer made you sound more intelligent.
Let's compare formal and informal situations. In a formal presentation, you might say, that's an excellent question. Let me take a moment to give you a thorough answer. In a casual chat with friends, you'd say, ooh, good question. Give me a sec to think about it.
Same function, completely different tone. And that's important. You don't want to sound like you're giving a speech when you're just chatting with friends over coffee.
Here's a quick practice activity. I'll give you a question, and you choose the best organizational time buyer. Question: why did you choose your career?
For a formal situation, I'd say, that's an interesting question. There are a few reasons, actually. First, I've always been passionate about this field. Second, I had a mentor who inspired me. The phrase gave me time to think of the reasons.
Perfect. Now some specific tips for you. First, keep a mental list of 3 go-to time buyers. Mine are, that's a good question, let me think, and, how should I put this? Second, practice them until they become automatic. You should be able to say them without thinking. Third, match the time buyer to the situation. Formal situations need formal phrases. Casual ones need casual phrases.
Those are excellent tips. And please, write in the comments, what's your favorite time-buying phrase in your own language? Does it have an English equivalent? We'd love to know. Share it with us.
Yes, I'm so curious about that. Let's review this section. Organizational time buyers, like there are a few ways to answer that, and let me start by saying, help you structure your thoughts while you're speaking. They make you sound organized and thoughtful.
Now let's go even further. There's a special category of time-buying phrases that are all about clarifying and confirming. These are essential when you're not sure you understood correctly.
This is so important, because sometimes you don't need time to think of an answer. You need time because you didn't fully understand the question, and there are specific phrases for that situation.
Let's talk about practical everyday scenarios. Imagine you're in a conversation and someone uses a word you don't know. You can't answer the question if you don't understand it. So what do you do?
I'd use a clarifying time buyer. Something like, I'm not familiar with that word. Could you explain what you mean? Or, when you say that, what exactly do you mean? These phrases buy you time and help you understand better.
Here are some detailed examples with context. If someone asks, "What's your take on the macroeconomic trends?" and you don't know what macroeconomic means, you can say, "I want to make sure I understand." When you say macroeconomic trends, could you give me an example?
That's such a smooth way to handle it. You're not admitting you don't know the word. You're asking for clarification. It makes you look engaged and thoughtful, not confused.
Here's another common situation. Someone speaks very fast and you miss part of what they said. You can say, "I missed the last part. Could you say that again?" Or, "Just to make sure I got that. You're asking about my plans, right?"
Oh, I love, just to make sure I got that. You're repeating back what you heard, which shows you were listening, but you're also confirming you understood correctly. It's a double win.
Let's talk about tone and delivery. The way you say these phrases matters a lot. If you say, "Could you repeat that with a smile?" it sounds friendly. If you say it with a frustrated tone, it sounds like you're annoyed.
That's such a good point. Listeners, let's practice tone. Say this with me. I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that. First, say it like you're genuinely curious and friendly. Now say it like you're irritated. The words are the same, but the meaning is completely different.
Here's a real-life practice situation. You're at a networking event, and someone asks you a complicated question about your job. You need time to think, and you want to make sure you understood. What do you say?
I'd say, that's an interesting question. Just to make sure I'm answering the right thing, you're asking about my specific role in the project, right? This buys me time and confirms the question.
Now, listeners, let's do a mini practice. I'm going to ask you a confusing question, and you respond out loud with a clarifying time buyer. Ready? What's your opinion on the ontological implications of artificial intelligence?
Whoa, that's a big one. I'd say, wow, that's a deep question. I want to make sure I understand. Could you explain what you mean by ontological implications? That buys tons of time.
Now create your own. Think of a time someone asked you something confusing. What clarifying phrase could you have used? Speak your version out loud right now.
Yes, out loud practice is everything. These phrases need to live in your mouth, not just in your brain. The more you practice them, the more naturally they'll come out when you're in a real conversation.
So to review, clarifying time buyers like "I want to make sure I understand" and "could you explain what you mean" help you when you need time because you didn't fully get the question. They keep the conversation going while you figure things out.
Okay, now let's talk about what can go wrong. Because even with these phrases, there are some common mistakes that can make things awkward.
Oh, I've made some of these myself. One time I used a time buyer and then completely forgot what I was going to say. I just sat there after saying "let me think" and still had nothing.
Haha, that's so relatable. So let's break down the common mistakes with time-buying phrases. The first mistake is buying time and then still not having an answer. You say, "That's a good question, let me think," and then 5 seconds of silence pass and you still say nothing. That's more awkward than just saying you don't know.
Here's the fix. If you buy time and still can't think of an answer, have a backup phrase ready. Something like, "You know what? That's a really good question, and I want to give it proper thought. Could I get back to you on that?" This makes you look thoughtful instead of stuck.
The second mistake is using the same time buyer over and over. If you start every answer with, "That's a good question," people will notice. It starts to sound like a habit, not a thinking tool.
Better alternative? Rotate your time buyers. Use "that's a good question" sometimes, "let me think" other times, and how should I put this at other times? Variety keeps your speech sounding natural.
The third mistake is using a time buyer that's too long or complicated. Some learners memorize very formal phrases and then use them in casual conversation. If a friend asks what you want for lunch and you say, "That is an excellent inquiry. Allow me a moment to consider my options," they're going to laugh.
Haha, that's so true. In casual settings, short and simple is best. Give me a sec. Let me think. Or even just a thoughtful is perfectly fine with friends.
Here's a funny example from my life. I once said to my brother, "That's a multifaceted question that requires careful consideration." He looked at me like I was from another planet. I should have just said, "Give me a minute to think."
Haha, that's hilarious. The fourth mistake is forgetting that sometimes the best time buyer is honesty. If you truly don't know something, it's okay to say, "I don't know off the top of my head, but I can find out." That's a time buyer that also builds trust.
Let's practice catching these mistakes. I'll say a response, and you tell me what's wrong. Someone asks your favorite color. You say, "That's an excellent and thought-provoking question. Allow me a moment of reflection."
Way too formal for such a simple question. Just say, I've always liked blue. Or even just blue. You don't need a time buyer for easy questions.
Here's another one. You use "that's a good question" for the fifth time in the same conversation.
The problem is repetition. Vary your phrases. Try "let me think," or "good question," "let me see."
Now, listeners, what's wrong with this response? Your friend asks if you want pizza or burgers. You say, "That's an interesting dilemma. I'll need to weigh my options carefully."
It's just pizza or burgers. Say, I'm feeling pizza today. Keep it simple and natural.
And remember, mistakes are completely normal. I still catch myself overusing certain phrases all the time. The key is to be aware and keep practicing. You'll get more natural with time.
Absolutely. Every conversation is practice. Don't be afraid to try these phrases out. The worst that happens is you sound a little formal, and then you adjust for next time. No big deal.
So we've covered 4 common mistakes: using a time buyer and still having no answer, repeating the same phrase too much, using overly formal phrases in casual settings, and not knowing when to just be honest and say you don't know.
And now it's time for interactive practice. This is where everything comes together.
I love this part. All right, we're going to do a choose the best response activity. I'll give you a situation and 2 options. You choose which time buyer works best. Ready?
Let's go. First situation. You're in a job interview, and they ask, "Where do you see yourself in 5 years?" Option 1. I don't know. Option 2. That's a great question. Let me take a moment to think about that.
Definitely option 2. It buys you time and makes you look thoughtful. Option 1 makes you look unprepared.
Next situation. Your friend asks what you think of a movie you just watched together. Option 1. How should I put this? I thought it was interesting. Option 2. That's an excellent inquiry. Let me formulate my thoughts.
Option 1 for sure. It's casual and natural for a conversation with a friend. Option 2 is way too formal.
Now your turn, listeners. You're in a meeting and someone asks a question you don't fully understand. Option 1. I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Could you rephrase it? Option 2. What? Choose and say it out loud.
Option 1 is much more polite and professional. Option 2 is too direct and could sound rude.
Here's a variation. How would you ask for clarification in a very casual setting, like talking to a sibling? You might just say, "Wait, what do you mean?" Or, "I'm not following." Shorter and more direct.
One more challenge. Create your own time-buying response to this question. What's the meaning of life? Write your time buyer and your eventual answer in the comments. Make us laugh.
And here's my final challenge for you. For the rest of today, try to use at least one time buying phrase in every English conversation you have. Notice how it feels. Notice how people respond. The more you practice, the more natural it becomes.
That's such a good challenge. The goal isn't to avoid thinking. The goal is to think while still sounding engaged. These phrases are tools. Use them wisely, and they'll make you a much more confident speaker.
Wow, we covered so much today. Let's do a quick summary of everything we learned about buying time in conversations.
We covered 3 main areas today. First, basic time buying words and phrases like well, so, and that's a good question. These give you a few seconds to collect your thoughts.
Second, we talked about organizational time buyers, like there are a few ways to answer that. And let me start by saying, these help you structure your thoughts while you're speaking.
Third, we explored clarifying time buyers like, I want to make sure I understand, and could you explain what you mean? These help when you need time, because you didn't fully get the question.
And we covered the common mistakes: buying time with no backup plan, repeating the same phrase, using overly formal language in casual settings, and not knowing when to just be honest.
I'm so proud of everyone who practiced along with us. Remember, even native speakers use these phrases constantly. Nobody has perfect answers ready all the time. These phrases are what make conversations feel natural and human.
Exactly. Using time buyers doesn't make you look weak. It makes you look thoughtful and engaged. It shows you care about giving a good answer.
So here's a reflective question for you. Which time-buying phrase from today are you going to try first? Is it "that's a good question"? Let me think. I'm not sure I understand. Pick one and try it today.
Yes, we really want to know. Tell us in the comments which phrase you chose and how it went. We read every comment, and we love hearing your success stories.
If you found this episode helpful, please hit that like button. It helps other English learners find simple English talks. And subscribe if you haven't already. We create new episodes every single week.
Share this episode with a friend who's learning English. Practice buying time together. Ask each other random questions, and practice using these phrases to answer. It's actually really fun.
Thank you so much for spending your time with us today. You're doing incredible work on your English journey. Every episode, every practice session, every conversation, it all adds up.
Be proud of yourself. You're learning skills that will help you in every conversation you ever have in English. That's huge. Keep going.
See you next time on Simple English Talks. Bye, everyone.
See you next time.